Okay, so does somebody want to name your agency and some of the services that you provide? Go ahead.
Labor, unemployment insurance, job placement, and employer taxes.
What's interesting is we actually had somebody from labor who was naming services, and there were 3 totally different services. So obviously, like, it's a very, there's a lot of services that you guys provide, and it sounds like a lot of them are really transactional. So what you would traditionally think of. Does anybody have some that are maybe more informational?
EPD, open burning ban information, and how to file a complaint.
Somebody else wanted to name some of their services, whether it's informational or transactional?
Department of Revenue, taxes, paying taxes, knowing how much you owe, business taxes and individual taxes.
Okay, so there's a lot.
It's your money.
Yeah, so everyone's real excited to work with you, is what you're saying.
And then the other part of Department of Revenue is motor vehicle registration.
Oh yeah, motor vehicle registration,
Alcohol licenses.
alcohol, tobacco, a lot.
Yeah.
He works in taxes.
So now that you're thinking about some of the services that you offer, whether they are informational or transactional, let's think about how you can lead with those. So when you have these specific services in mind, how do you lead with them? How can you feature services your audience is most likely searching for? Is this something that you feature in your navigation, on landing pages, in how do I's? And the answer will often be more than one of those. And for a situation like yours where it's very like transactional service heavy, think about ones that are the most common, and look in your analytics, start seeing maybe the user flow and how people go through that process, or is there, if they need to do this, if they need to do this one service or this transaction, is there going to be a related file that they need for that? So thinking about that and thinking about how to lead with those services and what people are really coming to your site for. Now next we're going to be talking about probably the most intensive part of your migration, which is auditing your content. And that's really the first active step that you're taking in that process. We'll work with you to compile all of your content and begin sorting through it. And you'll decide to do one of 4 things with all of your content. So you'll either keep, delete, combine, or split. And if you come to content and you're finding that you're getting stuck, these are some good questions to ask yourself. Start with the basics. So, is information accurate and up to date? Is content redundant? Is it a lot of different places all over your website, or even different places all on the same page where you're saying the same thing over and over? Can content be better organized and categorized? Are there dumping grounds of unrelated information? So is there a repository where you weren't quite sure where to put something and it all kind of ended up in one part? FAQs are a big offender of this. I see you nodding your head, somebody can relate. And is important content being properly highlighted? So are there important things that are just kind of getting buried or put on the same level of importance with everything else? Leave yourself enough time to go through this process. It's like we said, it's pretty intensive. We will work with you for it, but we do recommend 2 to 4 weeks depending on the amount of content you have. Another thing to factor in is how many stakeholders are there in that process? How many editors, how many writers, how many content creators in general, how many people are a part of that process, because you're going to need to work with them.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of content and probably a lot of stakeholders. I mean, do you suggest breaking it down like section by section, like we were saying, there's tax and motor vehicle and alcohol and tobacco, and just kind of try to take all the content, separate it, and then look at this section, look at this section, look at this section with those.
Yeah, I would start, in the beginning, I would start all together because you need to look at it holistically. Because I think that some of the problems that we see that arise sometimes, or like some of the challenges, are that people are very siloed. So they're not thinking about, and that's where we see a lot of redundancies or messaging that isn't similar. So make sure at least in the beginning phases you're together, but yeah, breaking it up like that is a great way to get it done, so that way you're not, using everybody's time to go through something line by line. And the other thing to factor in for something like that or something like EPD is there's going to be a lot of subject matter experts that you may need to consult who can make the call on content, because I know for some agencies we have the issue where they said, I can't make the call on this because this is something where an epidemiologist really needs to know about this and I don't understand what this is. So breaking it up by section like that, by topic, by expertise is definitely a good way to try and get through it quickly, because we now are through the migration process where we're hitting our cadence and you've got a limited amount of time to work on that. Do you have a question?
I do. I'm not sure if you're going to answer this, but what can we be doing now to clean up our site? Like, is there something that's on 7 that's not going to migrate easily to 8? Does it need to be in a certain format? Like, what can we do before we get to that 3D process?
So that's actually a great question. We're going to talk a little bit about that in this, and we're also going to talk about some of the things that you can do now, and it's great that you're in that mindset. You can start a content audit now. Like what we do is we use the system and we compile all of your content. You can open up a ticket and we can give that to you anytime, and you can start this process ahead of time, especially if you know it's going to be a lot. And
can I just say real quick, because you said 3 weeks, it's 3 months.
3 months.
Yeah, it's not.
But I just
want to make sure the content.
Okay, for the 3 months, but
yeah,
I just feel like we have like a lot of content. We have like a lot of PDFs. Like, is it something that's not going to transfer to 8? Like, what can I be doing now without making major changes to the website?
yeah, so you can go through that content audit, and we're going to talk about also a great thing to do will be structuring your content properly, and we're going to talk about that next, because yeah, this is a couple of weeks in a larger, like, multi-month process, but if you're already getting a jump on that, that's going to be great. You're going to move through that quickly. It's going to be a lot easier.
One thing, sorry to interrupt, just help out. One thing you can do now, if you are familiar with D7, if you're familiar with your site, there is a least viewed option up in the layout thing that kind of shows your stale content. It's stale content. It shows off things, pages that haven't been touched, that haven't been used in a while. It actually shows you exactly when was the last time it was updated or anything like that. So if you just want to start there, that's the first place. That's a good place to start right away, because it'll say no one, anybody's going to this site, this page in this amount of time. So do you still need it? You can kind of make that decision on your own. And that's one of the things that comes out of the content audit is, while it's all the pages, but it's also, these are the stale ones. These are the ones that no one's been on. So that's something you don't even need to send a ticket for that. If you can access, you can get to it yourself.
Yeah, and if you're finding that when you look at pages that aren't really visited and you're saying, well, actually there's some important information here, think about maybe where you can place that so it's higher priority, or that that's that combined one. You can think about, okay, what should maybe we combine with this to make sure we get those eyes on it. And we'll talk a little bit more about how you'll move through that process and how you can start structuring your content to get ready for that migration. So that actually brings us to the structuring content section. So what do we mean by structuring content? Structured content is information that is organized in a predictable way and is usually classified by metadata. And the good news is that Drupal 8 has done the work for you. So for your purposes, this comes in the form of properly using the preset structured content types. We've assessed the needs of agencies and constituents and worked to create Drupal 8 content types that meet those needs. And when we talk about content types, what we mean are a set of fields for a particular type of data. So examples can include a landing page, a service, or a call to action. And as you heard earlier today, content types do not just mean pages. So think of the example that Nikhil gave earlier today of a W-2 form. That's information that's structured in a predictable way. So what are the benefits of doing this? DSGA has worked with agency and vendor partners to determine needs and meet them with these specific content types. So when you use the correct content type and use it for its intended purpose, that lets you take advantage of all of its capabilities. It makes things easier and faster to work with in the long run. It means you can create something once, like a contact, and syndicate it across your entire site or multiple sites on the platform. So if you change it, you only have to change it once. So if somebody, if you have a contact information that changes, somebody comes in, somebody leaves, you just have to update that content once, and it's across the entire site. You don't have to remember all the places where you left that information. It's also pre-formatted for search engines to crawl and read it correctly, optimizing it for search. And since Google is everyone's homepage now, it allows search engines to easily pull and display content like your agency's hours and put it in the search results. I'm going to briefly run you through some of the Drupal 8 content types. They're classified in general groupings. It's not an exhaustive list, and it will expand over time. But we're just going to go through them quickly. And something to note is we will have resources for you both during your migration and resources on our website that will kind of explain each of the content types, what they do, how and when to use them, so you don't have to try and write these all down furiously now and remember them forever. The first grouping that we have is agency information. So this group of content types contains facts about an agency, its services, and its staff. These are types like organization, program or service, contact, location, and bio. Next we have agency communications. So this includes news, announcements, and records made available to the public. And you can see we have some that are news, alert, event, FAQ, important date, and press release. Then we have organizational tools. So this group of content type contains the core building blocks of your website, such as topic pages, special purpose landing pages, and collections used to organize related items. And these include landing pages, topic pages, listing page, book, and web form. And just to note that your home page is actually a type of landing page. Then we have micro content types, and these are a little bit different. So these are smaller content types intended to be housed on a page or pages with additional content. So once created, micro content types can be used in multiple places across your website. These include agency alert, call to action, important date, quote, and text block, and some of the others that you see here. Now we're going to do a mini pop quiz. I'm going to name a scenario and you tell me which content type you think you would use in that scenario. Okay, the first one. So you want to feature a service your agency provides, including a link to the first step in the process. Which content type should you use? Contact, organization, program or service, or listing page? You can just shout it. C? Yep. Program or service. So next one, you want to publish the details of an upcoming conference and provide a link to external registration. Which content type should you use? Location, listing page, important date, or event?
Event.
Yeah, it's D. So something to note about events is that users can't register on the website. It's a link to an external system, such as Eventbrite. And then the final one, you want to assemble crucial related content on a page that many users will enter from search. What content type should you use? Press release, landing page, link collection, or listing page? It sounds like there's some disagreement.
B.
The correct answer is B, a landing page. But I think that one was a little tricky because we had a couple people who weren't sure in the last one. All right, now I'm gonna open it up for discussion a little bit, and I'm gonna ask you some questions. This is your time. You can ask some questions too if you would like. So the first one is, what challenges are you facing when you're auditing your content? Because I know that you're going through these, but even if you're not going through migration yet, you're always looking at content, you're creating content, you're deciding, are you keeping the keep, compete, delete, combine, or split, or you're deciding what's going on there? What challenges are you facing there?
When I went through it, I had a hard time trying to figure out a way to use the combined split. I don't know that I ever marked anything combined split.
Okay. So why weren't you, did you find that the information was?
I just wasn't sure exactly what I was supposed to be doing with that one.
Okay.
That's just if you want to take content and merge it together
Yeah.
on another page.
Yeah, I just didn't see anything that really fit that for us. I don't know if,
Okay.
That's
yeah.
fine. You don't.
I mean, it may not fit for your agency. Maybe your content is appropriately split up, but
Yeah.
if you feel like you're like replicating content on one page and another page, you can maybe look at that and say, okay, this is basically saying the same thing. We're just missing a couple of things here. Let me add it over here. So that's basically all that is. If it doesn't fit your agency, it doesn't fit. It's fine. It's not like you're doing something wrong.
And another thing with us, we were one of the very siloed agencies.
Yeah.
So our content, we looked at it and said, okay, Susan, you do this group, Bo, you do this, whomever do this. So we weren't really thinking of it holistically at that point.
Yeah.
We were still viewing it siloed. So there may have been something that would have been good to combine or split across divisions, but I don't think we ever really looked at it that way.
Yeah, so one of the exercises that we've done recently and obviously like you can we have office hours, you can sign up outside, and if that's ever an issue, like you can come to us and we can work through that with you. But one of the exercises that we did that we found was helpful is with, I believe it was DHS when we had the big meeting.
I don't know. I don't know what
Right.
you're talking about.
So one of the agencies, they had, I think, like 40 or 50 content creators. They were across a bunch of different departments. It was they definitely struggled with silos. So one of the things we actually did with them was we had everybody name who's your primary audience. And we wrote them all down and we said, organize yourself into your primary audiences. And people were in groups with people they had never met. So you had people talking in the same groups, often talking about the same topics, but because they weren't in the same sort of department or team, they were not working together. So that's maybe one thing to think about it, is what we talked about with, you think agencies or departments or how you're organized internally, but think of it from a user perspective, is think about what information they need, what topics they're searching for. It's good to go into analytics to assess that and think about maybe from that perspective. If you find that you are very siloed, that's a good way to start maybe breaking out of those.
And unfortunately, like, we can't necessarily help you there because one, you're the content expert,
Yeah.
and two, it really takes collaboration amongst your whole agency. So if you are siloed, like maybe you guys, and I know EPD is, and I know it was DPH. DPH is very, very, very siloed. And they have many content managers. So the fact that like, I asked one of them, I said, have y'all ever just like had like a monthly meeting where you all meet together and talk about like content or who's writing similar content? And they were like, no, we don't even know hardly anybody else who manages content on our site. Well, so you can see like how often you might be like replicating content, but that comes like within your agency. Like somebody has to set that up. We can't do that for you. So if you feel like you're having that issue, then I would say like maybe set up a meeting. Like even if it's 3 months down the road, that's when all of you can get together, or a majority of you can get together. Just like set that up and just say, hey, these are the problems we're facing, and meet together for an hour.
Yeah.
Those are, I mean, we can help give you the ideas, but like sometimes it's just going to come from within your agency.
And I think if y'all can include that kind of thing when you start talking to us about the content audit, because I know in the past that, you know, you just send me a list of pages, then I go, you know, what do you do? I mean, just
Yeah.
separating it between divisions is a job in itself. And just to, you know, and it doesn't have to be do it this way, but lessons learned, things we've learned that are helpful to kind of, like I hadn't heard the keep, delete, combine, split thing yet, because I would look at it, like I said, I really looked at it and went, oh God, I don't want to do this, I'll do this later, as it gets closer. And, you know, that kind of thing I think is helpful just to give us that little push in the right direction.
Yeah.
And it is tough with the bigger agencies and you're having to work with all these different people and getting them to do it, because then, you know, not only do I have to make myself do it, but I have to make someone else do it.
I saw a couple other hands raised. Were there other questions on this one? Okay. Oh, sorry.
And I don't know if this is an audited content question, but I'm still feel a little in the dark about how the migration is going to work. And I know that there are pages that we think might be a problem, but if it's just a page, nothing exciting, will it just migrate over and then we look at it and see if we want to move it into a different content type, or?
So if you, for the most part, yes. But if you have content like, how do I file taxes for personal taxes? That's going to be a new content type. We don't have a how do I right now. So, but we will have a how do I in D8. That's going to be something we'll have to do after you migrate. I know you guys use your structured content pretty well, but if, say you weren't using events correctly and you were posting all your events in the site page, those could be updated now. We could use the events now, convert them now, and then we won't have to worry about them when you migrate. So it's a little bit of both.
So be thinking about it, because like the linked, the micro something linked,
The micro content.
that would be kind of a, you know, hey, I need to file my taxes, but you may also need this information.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at pages, kind of think about that.
Yeah.
And if it's an important page, which how do I file my taxes
Right.
is, then kind of set that one aside to say, yes, we might want to
Yeah.
look at this one a little harder before the migration, but the
Yeah.
rule blah, 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 blah is just going to migrate.
Right, and most of your micro content you're going to have to create on its own, because CTAs aren't available, promos aren't available, listing blocks aren't available. Those things we're going to have to create with you, or you'll have to create post migration. So those things, but if you just have like a regular site page, it'll migrate fine as long as you're good with how it looks now.
And do you think that's something good to set out when we're, because I'm ready, I'm like, I can't remember who back there was saying they're ready to get going. I am too, because I don't want to get surprised. And, you know, just kind of add to the keep, delete, combine, split, maybe migrate or look at, and just set a little extra category to pull out.
And
During the migration, is it just published content, or is it also archived and draft?
It will be anything that's archived / draft and published. So you'll be looking at everything. And then there's certain rules that we have that we'll get with you. Each agency we're working with differently, but the basic common rule is that press releases after 3 years won't migrate unless you tell us otherwise. So if you're like, we have to keep them for 5 years, then we'll keep them for 5 years.
What about related files and blog content, so things like that, are those coming over?
Yes, all your content is coming over. We're not bringing any content over.
So these content types, these are going to be all the default content types for all agencies?
Yeah, so now there are outliers where they will have specific content types. Like, for example, we had somebody in the last session who they had a very specific content type no one else would use. So we had law that has the opinion content type, which is official legal opinion, that's not gonna be available to other places. So if there, like I said, this is not, like, this will expand over time. So if there is a need that you're seeing that's not being met, we can work with you to see what would work best for this. And if there's really something that we need to add to it, we can talk about that. But just the important thing to remember through all of this is, like, we're not just gonna throw you out there and tell you to figure it out yourself. We're gonna guide you through every part of that process.
I'm sorry, one last one. And thinking about auditing content, this is not the time to review the content. It's more, we have, I don't know how many thousand pages, but we want to review what the page is, not what the page says. Because I can just see it all of a sudden becoming, oh, we need to rewrite this. And I'm like, well, I don't want to rewrite it right now, but.
We'll talk to you about that roadmap. That is one phase. This comes in several phases. So we'll talk to you about what specifically you're doing at each point. Because yes, like you said, like, there are migration blockers. There are things that are more important because you have a limited amount of time. And then we'll work with you after migration to start taking a deeper dive into that content and say, how could we do this better?
Okay.
So yeah, so there's levels of how in depth you're going to get with that.
And we're making sure that, they're gonna start opening this up, so don't be distracted if you still have questions. But, one of the things that when we tell you this, that we want you to focus on whether you need the content, not whether the content is like up to your standard or whatever. So during migration, if there's content you wanna rewrite, make a note in that content on it. We have a notes column and you can go back to that later and like rewrite it or do whatever you want with it. But that's not something we're gonna have the capacity to handle because we have all these other sites we have to work with. So, yeah, make a note and you can revisit it. We can help you if you need it, post-migration.
The content audit has these good metrics in it too to tell you about the readability and the reading level and the, what is it,
Like a flush page or.
yeah, like how it makes people feel, you know, so
Yeah.
you can use those pieces of information to, you know, make some decisions too about whether or not you want to rewrite it.
All right, so I think we're just gonna wrap that up and we're gonna, Nico's gonna say some closing